Hey, hello. How's it going? Apologies for that delay. It took me a few more moments than I thought to take care of some technical difficulties. My name is Brian Harnetty, and I am an artist and musician, and I am broadcasting to you live from Columbus, Ohio. And this is Archive Dive, and it's brought to you by the Wexner Center for the Arts and their new series called the Wex EP series, which stands for Essential Performances. I'd like to thank the Wexner Center for the Arts for encouraging me in making this happen. And I'd also like to mention that there are other people doing this. Last week was Jacati Sums, which was great, excellent musician. And next week is DJ Crate Digger. So please check them out. It's every Thursday at 5:30. Okay. I'd also like to thank the Wexner Center for helping with this larger project, the one I'm going to share with you today, which is called Shawnee, Ohio. They were the lead co-commissioners on the Shawnee, Ohio project, along with the Contemporary Arts Center for Cincinnati and Duke Performances down in North Carolina. And I'd also like to thank Creative Capital. They have been instrumental in helping me along every stage of this project. So a big thank you to them. And then getting the thanks out of the way first here, I'd also like to thank a couple of personal thanks. So one to Kevin Davison for some excellent videography, which you might see in a little bit, as well as Secret Studio, Keith at Secret Studio for helping with audio work. And then weirdly, my neighbor, Neil Schmidt, who had the one cable that seemed to keep this entire project from collapsing into a giant puddle of tears. All right, what am I doing? This is called Archive Dive, and I'd like to explore a single piece, which is called Jim. It's on this album. Where did it go? Shawnee, Ohio. This is Shawnee, Ohio. There it is. Okay, Jim is the first track on that album, and I lost my train of thought. Anyways, I'm going to explore that, but I'm going to explore it not only musically, but also culturally and historically. So I'm thinking in terms of how those three things might run into each other and inform one another. And for me, that's the most exciting part, not just the music itself, but how it works in history and culture and socially as well. That's the thing that gets me out of bed and makes me excited, and I'm glad to be a part of that now. Okay. One more thing. I'll see if I can encode it in a little bit here because of the technical difficulties, but I would like to have a tip jar for the Tecumseh Theater. I'll try to get it into the chat and into the comments below. The tip jar is not for me, but for the Tecumseh Theater, which you'll see in a little bit. I thought it'd be really cool, if we could send a few dollars their way. Like so many other people during the pandemic, they are suffering. So if we have a couple bucks, we can give it to them. And it'll help them keep their lights on to live for another day. All right, let's get into it. The first thing is thinking about place, and I have some sweet photos. All right. In order to think about Shawnee as an album, I often like to situate it in place. So here's a map of Ohio. And this is just like a regular old Google Maps. In fact, you could see a star down in Cincinnati, and I think that was from a taco place that I went to that I thought was really good. If you look at southeastern Ohio, it's in between Zanesville and Athens. That's where the region that I'm talking about. You could see that there's more trees there, and it gets more hilly as you go down further south. If I zoom in a little bit more, this is the region that's known as the Little Cities of Black Diamonds region. It's grouped around maybe like 20 or more towns that got their start in the 19th century as coal mining towns. And Shawnee is among them. It's towards the top there in the north. And it became sort of like the cultural center of the region, and still kind of is in a lot of ways. So that's part of my interest for that. here's a picture of Shawnee, and it is showing the circus that came to town. You can see some of the buildings there. Some are still standing and some have fallen down, but I just really like that photo. Here's another one of downtown Main Street on Shawnee. And I like this one. It just looks haunting to me and very beautiful. And one more. This one shows not only like the density of the buildings that are there, but also the unique architectural style, which includes those second floor porches that are really beautiful. I also included this photo because I'm going to show you a video in just a minute. And in this photo, I'm standing right down in the right-hand corner, but in today's time, obviously. So I'm going to flip over to that video, and you'll see me from that perspective. And so maybe you can keep in your mind's eye that in mind from the past and the present together. Okay, let me see if this video will work. All right, so here we are on Main Street in Shawnee. And when I first came here, like 10 years ago, I made a field recording. And that field recording was me basically walking from this point right here all the way to the other end of Main Street, which takes about 6 minutes. And on that recording, you hear my feet walking, my pants shuffling, but you also hear birds and a few dogs, occasional car passing by, and then also people walking by in the midst of conversation. And what I love about, I love this recording. What I love about the recording is that it seems like there's nothing there. It's really quiet. There's not a lot of sounds, but the more you listen to it, the more it sort of yields. And I love to think of this as a metaphor for the town and the album too. It starts off simple, but there are layer after layer that you can sort of dive into. And then the recording of Jim, he was probably in his 70s or 80s when he made it. And he's describing each of the buildings as he moves down the street from this angle. It was made in the 1980s or so, and many of the buildings that he was talking about have already sort of fallen down or in different states of disrepair. But what I love about this part of it is that there's another group of citizens that have been fighting hard to keep the buildings and hold them up and preserve them as best they can, which is no easy feat when you don't have a ton of money. And so the other thing that I really like about the recording of Jim is that it was a concerted effort of a group of citizens to record their elders before they died, and to hear their stories, and then to repeat the stories and tell them to each other. And basically they're creating a new story, one that's not based on extraction necessarily and taking things away, but has more to do with holding each other up and holding the buildings up. So it became a metaphor for me for the whole town. All right, let me show you some of the buildings. Okay, so here is the Buckeye Trail Association, which is pretty cool that they're here. They own 3 buildings. And then this is also the Little Cities of Black Diamonds Council. They have a cool little archive there, a lot of history stuff. There's the Harrigal Garage, and there used to be a children's art center called the Spicy Yam, but they lost funding in the recession. And then of course, there's the Tecumseh Theater, which is huge. It's like, for a long time, I think it was like the biggest, tallest building in Perry County. There's another opera house down the way, furniture store, and so on. But let's go into the theater. Okay, so here we are inside the Tecumseh Theater, and this is just a beautiful spot. It's obviously under repair, but that's part of its charm, I suppose. What I love about this place is that the floors are flat, and they used to use it for all kinds of activities, not just for theater and stuff. Also, there were no chairs here, so they could move all the chairs aside and have a big dance, or they could even play basketball here. And weirdly enough, my grandfather, Mordecai Williams, was the captain of the basketball team in the 20s. And then I just love to imagine in my mind's ear what that might have sounded like and looked like. There's a big balcony in the background. People might be sitting up there, feet are shuffling, the crowd is cheering, and they're playing basketball on the second floor of a theater. I just love that idea. And then weirdly enough, in doing some research on my grandfather, I found out that not only was he playing basketball here, but he was playing music here too. So I found like this old broadsheet of basically a battle of the bands between Shawnee and a couple other towns, where it was their orchestras. And my grandfather played saxophone in those orchestras. And they would like play songs, the crowd would cheer and give points, and then there'd be a winner, which I think Shawnee eked by with a win. And then lastly, this place was used for like high school graduations. So within just a couple of weeks, my grandfather would have played basketball, played in this battle of the bands, and then also graduated from school here. So the theater itself becomes the heart of the town and even the cultural center of maybe even the whole county. And it's really wonderful to think about it and to imagine what that might have been like, and also to think about its future now, and how it might be restored and used once again as a cultural center for the region. All right, let's go set up and do a song. Okay, so thanks. So if this song, Jim, is a story about place, it's also a story about a person. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about the materials that I used, the archival materials, and some of the other materials I used for the larger Shawnee project. One thing to think about with Jim is that he was in his 80s probably when he made the recordings, and he was probably the same age as my own grandfather, who I didn't even know because he died before I was born. But they most certainly knew each other as children. And to me, that becomes like a really great connection. It's as close as I can get to time travel, I guess. The other thing, let me go to some cool images, is that I didn't find or discover the recording. The recording was already there. On one of my first trips to Shawnee, I started to ask around about oral histories to see who might have made recordings of their family members. And I met John Winenberg, who we're still friends today. I said, "Do you have any recordings?" And he's like, "Well, hang on a second." And he went back into his back closet and he pulled out this box of cassette tapes. And what these are include oral histories made mostly in the 1980s and 90s of a generation of people that are now gone. And it preserved their memories about the place of Shawnee. But the other thing that's really interesting to me about this is that they used storytelling and sound recordings to talk to each other about places, to tell the stories about those places and not forget them, but also to fashion new stories and new ways of thinking about where they came from and where they can go in the future. It was essentially using storytelling as a way of organizing, which I just think is pretty cool. Here's the Jim Bath tape in particular, which is aesthetically pretty neat to me, I guess. And what I like about this tape, in addition to the information that's on there, is that the recording itself is like super noisy, which I thought was going to be way too much in my own music. But as I listened to it more and more, the noise became really like a character almost. It became part of the recording itself. And it also gave it a mark, like a mark of when it was made and how the tape is aged and deteriorated over time. And so the noise itself became another layer in these recordings that I just really appreciated. I not only used these oral histories, but I also used other recordings from more formal archives, most notably the Anne Grimes collection. Here's a picture of me at the Ohio History Connection listening to the Anne Grimes collection on a sweet slimline recorder. And the Anne Grimes collection is in the Library of Congress, but they have a copy here in Ohio. And she did a lot of recording throughout Ohio, especially for old folk songs, ballads, and the like. And we've And in this Shawnee project, I was able to use several recordings, most notably of some local murder ballads. And here's a pretty cool list of some of the songs. There are two singers here, Neva Randolph and Ina Simmons, right at the top. And singing Ina Simmons' Bill Terrell, which was a local murder ballad from the town of Gore, which is just a little way down the road. Other influences on the Shawnee project and in Jim came from labor songs and other pieces of music that people might be listening to in the late 19th century or early 20th century. Because it's in Appalachia, I guess the stereotype would be that, people would mostly be listening to and playing Appalachian music or old-timey music or country music. And while those things are certainly played and listened to there, I think that people were also listening to all different kinds of things, including like these labor songs, orchestral music, or local parlor music or sentimental songs or whatever. So I started to draw from these, maybe taking like a melody from here or there or a rhythm. And the reason for this kind of musical borrowing, even on a very small scale, is to sort of root and anchor the music in that time and place. It makes a little seed in my mind and it holds me anchored to that place. Other recordings that I pulled from, these are from my grandparents, from my grandfather Mordecai and his wife Dorothy, and these were piano parlor pieces that they would be playing in their homes. And I thought that was just really beautiful covers, so of course I'm going to show them to you, especially that one. I think it's really cool. But it's from their own collection of sheet music, and so they would sit around and sing these songs. And for me, it was a way to connect through a medium to an experience that I obviously didn't have a part of. So that's one way to deal with the material. Okay, now we're back to the tapes. So I'm going to, I'm back here again. I'm going to play another short video of me performing this song, Jim. It is not live. I really wanted to broadcast live from Shawnee, but I was concerned about the internet. So my friend Kevin and I went down this past Sunday and made these two videos. And I really hope you like it, and I'll play it now.
Okay. What did you do when you was a kid growing up that you had the most fun doing?
Well, I told you, playing basketball and shooting marbles and knocking the can and stuff like that.
What did you do on a Saturday night as a teenager growing up?
I used to like to get out out on my grandmother's and grandfather's front porch and watch the people go up and down Main Street. Believe it or not, on a Saturday night, the people in town, the town was crowded. But then you had Sevens had a restaurant, then you come on down, then you had Peetons had a red and white store. You come on down, and Yank Hodgson had a store for various things. Come on down to E. Welch's, or Charles Welch's, and he had a little bit of everything in that store. It was mainly mining supplies and feed, but he had a lot of other stuff in there too. And if you went in there and asked for something and he didn't have it, he'd probably have it in there in the next week or two, like pottery and different things like that. But that, I would be up there on the front porch. The fire station was not down there. There was Nicholas's store still standing. Maybe it might have fallen down by the time you get this printed, but right now it's still standing. And then there was another building in there. That Doherty's, they had a music store in that one time. And then when the bar across the street burned out, they moved the bar, and the music store had been out of business for years. They moved the bar in there. Hazel Matthews, that was before she bought the bank and moved everything up to the bank. And then the next building to us was the funeral home and lumber and furniture store. Mainly funeral home and furniture on the side. Sam Corn over Corning was the owner of it, and Doc Hillis, the undertaker from Zanesville, he's dead now. He came in to run it in Shawnee, and he met and married the Richards still in Shawnee here. And then there was my grandfather's two buildings. And then there was at one time, years ago, there was a little jewelry shop over in the other building that burnt when my home burnt. He, Doherty's side, Shore, Mrs. Shore had a jewelry store in there. Up there in Hannah's building was a restaurant, and it was run by she was from Hammark, and
Hey, all right, I'm back. So that was performing Jim in the Tecumseh Theater, and I'm just now putting up the link in the chat for the donate button in case you're interested to donate to the Tecumseh Theater. And at this point, I don't know if anyone has any questions or thoughts or comments or answers, which is fine too. I forgot to mention at the top of the show that I was going to do a Q&A session at the end. So if you have any questions about Jim or Shawnee or about the project or anything like that, I'm happy to do that. I'm so glad to see all these folks making cool comments here. So thanks for that. If you don't have any questions, I'll just do a quick thank you again and a plug for the Shawnee album. Once again, you can find it in Carl Records, which is based in Berlin, Germany, and it's on their Bandcamp. You can also check out a bunch of other albums that I have up on Bandcamp if you'd like. And that's about it. So thank you very much. Thanks to the Wexner Center. And thanks to everybody for tuning in, and take care. I'll see you later. Oh, wait, hold on. Here's a question. How did you get started mixing music with history, which is very interesting? I had a teacher, here's another one. Okay, so I had a teacher in graduate school who really liked to borrow music as part of a long tradition of musical borrowing. And I loved that, and I thought it really fit me well, except I became more interested in the recordings themselves than borrowing from notated music, if that makes sense. So that began my journey with sampling because I liked the grain of the recordings and the voices, and that to me was just as important as the notes. And then it just kept expanding from there. If I liked the other things in addition to the musical information, then that could lead to other things like how do people get along together, and how do societies work? How does history collide with sound? All these different things took on just as much importance to me as the music itself. So that's how I did that. Here's another question. Would you mind explaining what initially inspired you to work with archival music? Very, very similar. I was dealing with samples and really enjoying it, but I wasn't thinking very much about the cultural context around them. And that became increasingly a problem, like an ethical problem. So back in about 2005, 2006, I started working at the Berea Archives in Berea, Kentucky. They have Appalachian Sound Archives there. And that was the first time I had ever really experienced meeting people that were related to those that were recorded. And then everything changed because there was a personal connection, and I didn't feel detached anymore. I also didn't feel like I could do whatever I wanted. I felt a sense of stewardship to the recordings, and like I needed to at least check in and get permission and talk with perhaps the people that were connected to the recordings. So it just keeps growing from there, I think. Here's another question. Any other artists trademark, any other artists you were looking at for inspiration, reference, and how to approach combining recordings with music? My background is in classical music, and, I think it's solidly rooted in like Steve Reich and all this stuff. So his music, like Different Trains or whatever, the combining of archival recordings along with music is definitely there. However, I think what I do is a little bit different in that it's looser in the musical world than being really strict with the recordings. And I also try to get out of the way and leave the recordings alone as much as possible. So I'm not sort of like chopping it up too much. And then the third thing is that now I spend more and more time working in the communities that are connected to the archives instead of just thinking it solely as musical material. Okay. Carolyn says, is the Bath family still in Shawnee? I do not have the answer to that. Unfortunately, I don't know, so I'll pass on that. But I bet John Winenberg would probably know, or Cheryl Blosser might know, who works there all the time. Robin Thompson says, do you have any plans to do further music projects inspired by life here in Southern Perry County? I'm in Hemlock, yeah. Oh, that's great. Well, yeah, I'm constantly inspired by Perry County. And I'm working there right now with a couple of nonprofits and networks, Ohio's Hill Country Heritage Area and the Winding Road Network. But that's more to do with helping with them do organizing and creating a better economy there. At the same time, I keep thinking about art projects that I have done and keep doing. I've done one for the past year called Forest Listening Rooms, where I'm working with people in the forest just to listen to archival recordings, but listen to the forest and use that as a means to cross political divides and think about the places and environment and so forth. And then I'd like to do a new project called Paris of the Coalfields, again, centered in Shawnee, but thinking toward the future and how might the future be different and how can we change that. So if Shawnee, Ohio as a project was about the past mostly and Forest Listening Rooms was about the present, then it seems like a future project's in mind. Yeah. Okay, moving on. Hi, Polly. It's so nice to see you there. Here's two resource questions from my 9-year-old. Excellent. Is there a good spot to find archival audio that is in Commons to use freely? Well, I think the Library of Congress just opened up a ton that you can actually, there's a program, I have to look at it. It's like a DJ program using the Library of Congress recordings. So I think I would start there. I can't wait to try it out myself. Oh, here's the second question. And what is the best beginner audio mixing software? Well, anything, whatever you have. It can be, just whatever is available on your computer, or so there are lots of free programs that you can download too. Yeah, I'm not a stickler for programs. I think you use what you have and you tailor things around your project and what you want to do. So that's my vague answer there. James says, please post the links to all those organizations that you're working with in Perry County. Sure, I can definitely do that. Again, I'll just mention them again. So Ohio's Hill Country Heritage Area, which is focused on the full Appalachian region of Ohio, and then the Ohio's Winding Road, which is focused on 9 counties, including Perry County. And really the goal, for that is to help build economies that maybe aren't necessarily extraction-based anymore, and that can deal more with experiences and taking advantage of the Wayne National Forest and all of the natural things that are there. So yeah, it's really great. And hey, Kevin, he says, how do you strike the balance between what you write and giving the archival material breathing room? Is there an aha moment when the balance is right where you want it? There actually is. I think what I like to do is listen to the archival material as much as I can, and constantly until I can't stand it anymore, and I have to try to add my own voice to the mix. And then at that point, I experiment with a lot of small musical ideas, and then it's a matter of combining them together. I guess I see these people's voices even when Jim is speaking. It feels like a song to me. I feel like he's singing all the different inflection in his voice. So I use the similar ideas writing songs. You try to get out of the way and make some space. But there's absolutely aha moments. Yeah, good question, Kevin. And he says Audacity is free. Yeah, that's a great one. Yeah. Peggy says the donation link for the Tecumseh Theater doesn't seem to work. Okay, I'll see if I can correct that. Surprisingly hard to do things in real time and talk. I hadn't anticipated that. Luke, hey Luke, how are you? Luke wonders, I just said about wanting to leave the recordings relatively untouched, but do you find it hard not to sometimes or more view it as a healthy constraint? Yeah, I mean, when you let the archive recordings dictate what you do with them, it does solve a lot of those composer problems of the blank page. That's a really good question. And I think I do, excerpt things and try to figure out how I can reduce a lot of the recordings, because there's obviously a lot of things, but I like to try to find chunks that are relatively all together, and then figure out how I might set music around it. So in each stage, I'm letting either the recordings or even now the community around the recordings to start making more and more of the compositional decisions and the creative decisions around a project, and eventually moving along a line towards being sort of like co-creators with the people from the places. Adam Wood, nice to see you. How do you feel your art and art in general has been able to have an impact on the place and the experience it stems from? That's hard to say. I can't underestimate. I mean, I can't. I don't know if I have much of an impact at all, because I think that people were doing stuff long before me, and I am helping out where I can. But I'm just one person. I think that there are lots of people doing really great work, and have been doing so for decades. So, like the Tecumseh Theater, for example, was from what I could tell, was going to be torn down and used for scrap parts, and local residents got together and were able to purchase it 40 or 50 years ago, and then it's been a long process of restoring it, and I see that as an amazing metaphor for the town, obviously, but also it's like an endurance test. I mean, to do that for so many decades, and to see it move incrementally, slowly. It's not like somebody can magically produce $1 bazillion to make everything just fine. So they have to use other means to hold up the building and build community. And I just am so impressed with that. Okay, Jay says he was able to donate. So thanks, Jay. Maybe it's working. That's good. Okay, and then Trademark has put the donation link in there. And someone says, hi from Italy, 7 seconds. That's great. I hope you're having a nightcap along with this. That's really cool. Wow, I love the overwhelming response. I just am so grateful that you have such good questions. And I suppose I should call it a night. So thank you again for tuning in and listening. And hopefully we'll cross paths again. Take care. All right. Bye.